Have you ever stopped to consider that you might not be experiencing reality at all? At least reality as you know it. Now, I know that that sounds really ridiculous, and in fact, it sounds like something out of the Matrix, doesn't it? But stay with me, because whether simulation theory is true or not, there is something even more fascinating happening every single day inside your own mind. And understanding it could completely transform the way that you think about manifestation, success, relationships, even your future. A few years ago, I came across a theory that has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and physicists for decades. The idea that reality itself could be a simulation. Now, before you click away thinking, I've completely lost the plot, let me be clear. I'm not saying we live inside a giant computer. No, that's not it at all. What interests me isn't whether simulation theory is true. What interested me is what it reveals about the way we experience reality, because here's something that most people don't realize. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of information every single second. 11 million! Yet consciously, you're only aware of about 40, which means the vast majority of reality never reaches your conscious awareness. Your brain filters it, deletes it, distorts it, interprets it, then presents you with a version of reality that it believes is important. Now, just think about that for a moment. So to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here is a personal experience of mine to emphasize how this works. I remember one day when I found out about the brain and the way that it works, the way that it filters information, I couldn't believe what happened next. My ex-husband dropped my daughter off to her ballet lesson, and he was going to pick her up, but things changed, and so I was handed the task of picking her up from her ballet lesson. And that was about an hour and a half later. She came out of the ballet lesson and was looking everywhere except at my car, where I was sitting waiting for her directly in front of the hall doors to the ballet lesson. And the reason why she didn't see it was because she was looking for her father's car, which was completely different to my car. She even looked straight at me and still didn't see me. That's how much the brain filters. So what you're experiencing isn't really reality. It's reality filtered through your beliefs, your memories, your assumptions, your identity, your fears, your expectations. And this is where manifestation becomes incredibly interesting, because two people can walk into exactly the same room and leave with completely different experiences. One person sees opportunity where the other sees risk. One person sees abundance, another sees lack. One person notices possibilities, another notices problems. Have you ever heard of the concept, your glass is half full? The room didn't change. Reality didn't change. The observer changed. And therefore the experience changed for each person. This is something I've seen repeatedly through my own life and also through my clients. There have been moments when I was facing uncertainty, challenge, circumstances that could easily have convinced me that nothing was possible. Yet, somehow, in those same moments, I could also see possibility. Not because I was ignoring reality, but because I was choosing which aspects of reality to focus on and focus towards. This is exactly what the Reticular Activating System does. Known as your RSA, it acts like a filter. It decides what information is relevant and what information is allowed in. And once it has decided something is important, suddenly you start seeing it everywhere. I mean, have you ever noticed that when you're buying a new car, you choose the model, you choose the make, you might choose the color, and then suddenly everyone seems to have it, right? The cars were always there. You simply weren't looking for them. And the same thing happens with opportunities, with money, with success, with relationships, and particularly with manifestation. What your mind believes is important, it begins highlighting. What it believes is impossible, it often ignores completely. This is why your identity is so very important, because identity determines what your brain is willing to show you. Now, if your identity says, I'm not successful, your brain will start collecting that evidence. If your identity says, nobody loves me or likes me, your brain starts collecting that evidence. And if your identity says, opportunities never come my way, your brain starts collecting that evidence. And before long, your beliefs begin looking like that reality, not because they're true, but because they're being reinforced. And this is the main reason I became so fascinated by manifestation. Not because I think we're magically creating anything, but because I became fascinated by how our beliefs shape our experience of our reality, how our expectations influence what we notice, how our subconscious programs affect our decisions, how our identity influences outcomes. And perhaps that's the real reason hidden inside simulation theory. Not whether reality is a simulation, but whether your experience of reality already is. Because in many ways, it is. Your brain is constantly constructing meaning, filling gaps, making predictions, creating stories, and then presenting those stories back to you as truth. The question is, are those stories helping you or limiting you? Because whether we're living in a simulation or not, one thing is certain. Most people are living inside a reality created by old beliefs, old experiences, and old identities. And until those beliefs change, reality often appears to stay exactly the same. Which is why manifestation is not simply about changing your circumstances. It's about changing the lens through which you experience them. Because the moment the lens changes, the possibilities you can see begin to change too. And that is where everything starts to change. And whether we're living in a simulation or not, that insight could completely change how you think about manifestation, identity, beliefs, and your future. And honestly, I think that's where the story becomes even more interesting.